This is Talk the Home and Common Sense. 12:39 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's turn our attention to our American cousins. One of them, of course, is turning up on Wednesday. That's Donald Trump, the US president, on a two-day state visit to this country. But, of course, also lots of news in the last week about the horrific assassination, the shooting dead while speaking live to students on a campus in Utah of Charlie Kirk. Well, let's talk about all this with Erin Moorcoat. She's a spokesman for Republicans Overseas UK and was a friend of Charlie's. Very good afternoon to you. And Errol, I send my sympathies to you for the loss of your friend.
Well, thank you, Julia. And it's not just my friend, but it's all of our friends. Charlie had a impact on people. He touched people. He met people, and he's such a short life. You know, he died at 31. He and I worked together, launching Turning Point UK. We were just boys comparatively. When we first met at Berkeley, we were kids. And then he became a man and died a man in the couple of years that, you know, men grow up. And it's something that's horrible and sad and terrifying to watch. Somebody who really believed in, somebody who I didn't believe in his message when I first met him. I thought, these people, we can't reach these people. And he really convinced me when I was a student at Berkeley that we could go out and talk to them and share our ideas.
And this is where his assassination, I think assassination is the right word in this story, is so shocking because, and the outpouring of hate from many on the left. Now, look, I don't excuse the right, particularly the right in America, for some of the language. I mean, frankly, Donald Trump's own language over the years, belittling, threatening. So, you know, talking about, joking about shooting journalists and things like that. You know, there's a lot of people who say stuff beyond the pale, but the outpouring by the people who think they're the good people on the left about Charlie Kirk's murder and sort of celebrating it, and we'll come to a man here in Britain, the Oxford Union president-elect, in just a moment, but it was very, very shocking. I was just in Israel last week, and this was something that, because Charlie Kirk was a big pro-Israel speaker, there was something that people found very shocking. And I was on an organised work trip, and one of the people with me on the trip was North Korean defector Yeonmi Park, who was due to be on that speaking tour, knew Charlie Kirk well, and obviously it was absolutely devastating for her. But the reaction from the left has been extraordinary. Do you think Charlie Kirk's assassination, does it change something that a man who said, let's use our words and let's try and change people's minds with words, being assassinated in cold blood by someone who disagreed with his words, it would appear, from the suspect who's been charged. Do you think anything changes now?
I think it does, and it changes for the better and for the worse. There's two camps. There are people who are saying Charlie would have wanted us to take his message and spread it. Charlie was a Christian. Charlie believes his soul is saved. Don't worry about Charlie. Charlie's watching us. There's that group. There's another group of people who are saying we don't believe that this was going to work, and now we're confident that this isn't going to work. This isn't a bipartisan thing. We're not looking for commiseration. We're not looking to come back to the table. We sat down at the table, and you shot us in the chest. And that's the two camps right now in our party. There's a lot of hurt and division. And obviously, people have hurt feelings. They're going to react maybe negatively, or some people have hurt feelings. They react through faith. But right now, it's creating a schism in some degree between people who want to take this not in a physical or violent way. I'm not saying that, but who don't want to keep being that joyful warrior that Charlie was and would have probably wanted us to be. And there's people who are saying, no, let's keep that flame going. So that's I think that's natural and that's healthy. Everybody's going through those emotions, but that's the reality of it. People are not 100% united. There's so many different feelings, and feelings of anger, sadness, and people are scared also.
Would you want to go on a US campus tour and say anything and risk your life? I think would be a big question. I mean, Donald Trump has got, teams of security and all the protection. And when he was president-elect, he still faced two assassination attempts, one that got him, missed by a matter of centimetres. We've had some revelations about the suspect who has been arrested, Tyler Robinson, turned in by his own family, by his own father, who spoke to a friend who was a pastor who went to the police. It's been claimed by the Utah governor that the suspect accused of shooting Charlie Kirk dead was in a romantic relationship with his roommate, who's believed to be trans, as in a man who is busy thinking he's transitioning to be a woman, and that his roommate knew nothing about this. But the question that was asked of Charlie Kirk just at the moment when he was He was just answering the question when he was shot. We've seen, I mean, sure everyone has seen that horrific image, footage online, was about trans issues. And he was someone who very much spoke up, against sort of the trans mania, the sweeping America, even worse than here. What do you make of that revelation from the Utah governor?
It doesn't surprise me whatsoever, based on the recent history of trans violence in the United States, as well as sort of. I'll put this in a very interesting sense. We crossed a cultural Rubicon unintentionally when we started to say silence is violence.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, people who were not being talked to were being transgressed upon. And then in the trans community, the concept of dead naming.
Yeah.
So if your name was Jack and I call you Jack, you turn to Jill and I call you Jack, I've equivalently murdered you. So dead naming, silence is violence, all of these things to turn passive people into enemies. So that is a lot of the culture where a lot of people who didn't really want to be involved got sort of lambasted as anti-trans or TERFs. For example, when women, J.K. Rowling has said more offensive things about trans people, by the way, than Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk's entire thing.
I don't think she said anything offensive about trans
no, I don't think it's
people.
offensive at all myself, but based on how they take these things. I mean, she's a much more sterling defender of women in general. Charlie Kirk's main concept there was, hey, wait a second, if you're under 18, you can't get a tattoo, you can't do a lot of things, probably you shouldn't be able to mutilate your body.
Yeah, not
Trans
controversial.
And said, oh, Charlie Kirk wants us all genocided. That was never the philosophy. So now we have an enemy in a people who we don't hate, a people who Charlie prayed for.
Yeah, it is utterly bizarre. What do you make, just finally on that issue, of the president-elect of the Oxford Union, the debating society at Oxford University, who celebrated the shooting of Charlie Kirk online, and then Dad said he shouldn't have, and then kind of defended it. He's done it a number of times. He's now set to face disciplinary proceedings and a vote of no confidence over his role at the Oxford Union, but not as a student. Should he face any proceedings, there's going to be a vote from sort of lifetime members, basically to say, we don't want someone who can debate a man face to face in the Oxford Union, as he did only a year or so ago, and then laugh about his death because he disagrees with his views representing this organisation. Do you think it's right that he should be forced out, or rather better, that he should resign?
Well, the way I look at it is, not only did he fail to debate with any sort of articulation, he failed to even put on a suit and show respect to Charlie or the organization. Now,
there's normally black tie in a debate at the Oxford Union, actually.
Well, here's the thing. So I really showed up in the UK around 2017, 2018 when I started. When I showed up, the Oxford Union was a joke. I went to this place and I saw these people. Like, this was not an impressive organization to me. So my entire time in the UK, it's been a comedy show where I've had no respect for this organization. Now, I know the people who were there before I showed up in the UK were legitimate, and I've seen, things in the history. But my experience is that this is like a comedy organization of unqualified DEI kind of whiners and complainers who can't hold a real argument unless they're sitting around with each other. Yeah. So the Oxford Union to me is like, you could be, kicked out of Chuck E. Cheese for all I care. It doesn't mean anything to us anymore. Now, I know it means a lot in the UK, but if you want to save that organization, a man like this cannot be leading it. If he continues to lead it, the lack of respect, myself and others who weren't around since 1850 will continue to be at the Chuck E. Cheese
Also,
level.
this guy, George Aberranier, got into Oxford with 2 Bs and an A. The minimum requirements are 3 As, and most kids who get in get 3 A stars. So that tells you something's going on there. I also want to ask you just finally about the visit of the leader of the free world to this country, Donald Trump, on a state visit. He visited Scotland more recently, but he's going to be on a state visit, guest of the King, and he's going to be obviously with doing all of the state stuff we know he loves. We're playing our Trump card, ironically, with Donald Trump. How much of the fallout from our US ambassador Peter Mandelson being sacked over his close relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, how much that fallout is going to damage this state visit, given that, of course, that Donald Trump was once friends with Jeffrey Epstein?
I would say that the damage would have to be entirely in the UK. In the United States, it's really not in the lexicon or conceptually who Lord Mandelson was, what happened. It was a blur for most Americans. Now, what that plays in the UK media, I think perhaps is much more substantial. And I think that maybe there will be some ways to try to overshadow his visit in some ways. But there's protests, there's everything against Donald Trump. So if they can tie anything to Trump, to Epstein and something, I guess maybe. But as far as how it plays domestically, how it plays with anybody in the US, we don't I mean, no offense, we just don't know who your ambassador is. We never even
Harsh but fair. If only we'd never heard of Peter Mandelson as well, we would be that lucky. Errol Moore, Coach, I so appreciate you joining us, Republicans Overseas UK spokesman. Going to take a quick break. Up next.